is a model that universities are constantly aspiring for. And we're really looking at this as a learning session because we have outreach professionals from a lot of different universities. We also have professionals from service providers. These are service providers in career and college guidance. There are school counselors, and everybody really wants to know the Ashoka story, what clicked, the vision. And so we're very excited, and Ankur is going to formally introduce you. But just to give you an overview, the Outreach Collective is an initiative that Ankur and I have embarked on, and in just less than about 4 months, we have over 600 members from the industry. And it's the largest ever collective of outreach and guidance professionals um, in this part of the world. We really hope to create a professional body that is working in a very practical way, and is not just about giving gyan, but is actually about making actual difference, and talking about policy and learning and professional development, and a lot of other changes that universities need to bring about in their approach to admissions and recruitment. So with that, welcome Vineet, and this is the Outreach Legends of Outreach series, and we are very pleased to have you as a guest. In this series, we essentially invite legends, as the name suggests, people who have redefined how we look at admissions, how we look at college guidance, and how we look at recruitment. People who've redefined what it means to be a higher ed brand. And who comes first to mind is Ashoka when we talk about Indian higher ed. So thank you for being with us today. Ankur, over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhakti. Thank you so much, Vineet, for joining us here today. Thank you so much to all our dear colleagues from the Outreach Collective for being a part of this conversation. Over the next 90 minutes or so, we aim to learn, as the series suggests, Legends of Outreach. We had Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, the Vice Chancellor of Jindal, last time around for the month of January. And this month, we have Vineet Gupta, founder and trustee of Ashoka University, Plaksha University, and one of the co-founders of Jamboree Education, one of the leading names for coaching and industry in this country. So how should I introduce Vineet? I mean, a lot of the people that I have worked with over the last 10 years or more than 10 years in Indian higher ed now, I mean, Vineet is one person who gave me, as they said, my first break in higher education and internationalization of education, that also with Ashoka University. And I still remember him and still grateful to him for giving me that opportunity. And how did that opportunity came about is also a story. I mean, briefly, if I was to tell you, I was supposed to be a SAT trainer, English verbal trainer for Jamboree Education. I had gone, I had given couple of classes also in the Delhi NCR centers, and then I realized that I'm not good inside the classroom. Probably I should be a better person outside the classroom. So Vineet kindly let me go from Jamboree at that point of time. I went away, did some work with a different kind of university in internationalization. And one fine day, I was landed up in Vineet's office and I saw Ashoka University plaque at the behind of his seat, and I'm like, Ashoka University. This is something, and this is 2013, and I'm like, this is where a lot of people in the higher education sector are talking about this university, and I didn't know in all my ignorance that Vineet is the person leading it, and when I went back and I realized, I mean, he is the person who is leading this project, and then I reached out to him, and that's his history. But Vineet, everybody, I mean, most of us have been really excited over the last few weeks that we have announced his name, that he will be coming and sharing his knowledge as legend of outreach. We have shared his profile, but I still like to read out his profile. Vineet is alumnus of IIT Delhi. He is a person who has worked tirelessly in the Indian higher education space for last 25 years. He is a thought leader. I already mentioned his contributions in terms of setting up institutions such as Ashoka University, which is right now a name in itself in private university higher education space that a lot of us look up to. But he is also running very successfully Jamboree Education, which is also doing some really great and interesting work in making access to international universities available to our students in India. And not only in India, the center, he has centers in Nepal, in Middle East, and a lot of other places. I've had the honor of traveling with Vineet in Middle East, and I've seen the work that he has been doing there. Vineet, it's an honor to have you here with us, and I like to start this conversation today. As Bhakti mentioned, we have some of the leading admissions and outreach professionals from some of the leading institutions in this country. Many of them working with new age universities that have been set up post Ashoka. And a lot of them ask me, it's a natural question to me, how do we build another Ashoka University? I mean, how do we bring in admissions and outreach practices that were being followed at Ashoka at my institution? And I thought this will be a perfect platform for us to have you and talk to these senior professionals, young professionals about your journey with Ashoka University. How did you build the admissions and outreach space? No, definitely the institution as a whole, but focused on admissions and outreach space. Private universities before Ashoka, anybody thought that they could buy their way into a private university? I mean, nobody really thought that a private institution can be so conscious about who they let in their doors and how they do outreach. So there is a story there that we want you to share and probably have your initial remarks, Vineet. I would like to invite you now. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Ankur and Bhakti, for your very, very kind comments, and everything that you say about me and Ashoka. It's very humbling. Uh, Ashoka is sort of been a passion and dream project for many of us, and I got associated with the effort very early in 2007. And as Ankur mentioned, I run Jamboree, which is a company that trains students who want to go abroad. I used to find students being admitted to top universities like Berkeley, Madison, Urbana-Champaign. And many times, some of these students would not find their way into Delhi University, or they would find an evening college somewhere. And these are bright students, 95%. But the cutoffs in DU are what they are. You all know that. And, I used to sometimes wonder that as a country, we are probably letting our students down, and we don't have high quality education for our children. And that led me to think that maybe we should set up a high quality university in India. As I started to share this idea with other friends, I realized there were many others. Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who's founded Naukri, he went to St. Stephen's, and he was not very happy with the way that institution had shaped up. So he was thinking about a similar effort, and Ashish, Pramath, many of whom we all sort of came together, and the effort started. It was really if I can say, a group of four when we started. Ashoka now has 200 donors and 36 trustees. So the effort has really expanded over time. And we felt an institution that is built on a collective model of philanthropy would really push the boundaries of excellence. So that was really in our DNA. Ashoka doesn't belong to any individual, any person. But yet it belongs to everyone. So when you hear our faculty and students speak, even they feel that the institution belongs to them. So there is something in the effort of a collective that gives it that character. Anyway, so we started thinking about building Ashoka in 2007. The university finally opened in 2014. But to come to what Ankur said, in 2012 September, when we started construction, and it was just it was a flat piece of ground. That's the time we said, okay, let's start doing outreach as well, because if we have to recruit a high quality class, we need time. So literally with a presentation on a laptop with no campus, just a promise, uh, there was a strong group of people backing it. We had some good faculty who had signed on. So I had two people that time, Aman and Sasi. Many of you know these people. Sashi had also done the Young India Fellowship at that time. Ashoka wasn't there, but we were running out of a rented campus. So we really, I think a lot of things that have gone into building Ashoka have been very ground up. I don't think we followed any standard practices. We would just sit around a table and think, what is the best thing to do? What would work? We would ask very honest questions. And I remember in the early days, the team felt that, look, it has to be all social media. We should do social media aggressively. And I think the first 2 3 months we did that. We did a lot of Facebook posts, etc., etc. Um, and that time we realized it wasn't working. People were not associating with the brand. Ashoka is perhaps the fully first full in liberal arts university in India. People didn't understand what liberal arts is. So we then got together again. We said, look, this is not working. What do we do now? And we said, okay, we need to go directly to schools. We need to speak to students, and we need to speak to teachers, and we need to speak to principals. And Sasi, I remember then really pretty much took off, and he covered a lot of ground. We added more people. It had become we started in October 12th, but maybe by March it had become a 4 5 people team. And we were really on a blitzkrieg. Do We will get a group of principals together in a room over a coffee or evening. We would do open houses. Uh, but I think the thing that worked the best for us is our faculty workshops. Again, we sat down together and said, look, what is our strength? I mean, we are saying, okay, an Ivy League kind of education here, but why should people buy that promise? And we said, look, if we can put our faculty in front of students, and they really do like a class, what would actually be taught. If they do a demo class, uh, that may give students a flavor of what's going to happen at Ashoka. So that was quite a huge success. So we would do these sessions everywhere in Delhi, in Mumbai, etc. Our faculty were flying around. Very difficult to get their time now because they're all teaching, but that time the institution wasn't up. We had made a few hires. So we did a lot of faculty workshops, open houses, parent open houses, student open houses. We went on a limb educating people about liberal arts. Many CBSE schools did not have humanities sections. Not that liberal arts is only for people with humanities, but so I think there was a whole lot of effort in educating people not only on Ashoka but also on what is liberal arts and what is this whole idea of a breadth and depth and how do we build a great institution. So those were the early years, and we were lucky. We did have great traction, and we built the first class of 124 students, which was fairly selective. There's all Even at that time, it was almost 1 in 10 on selectivity. So and what was great was students from all over the country applied. I think we had 26 out of 28 states represented, many of the leading schools across the country, but also students coming from underprivileged backgrounds, uh, who didn't have access, many first time learners. We had applicants from Bhutan, Afghanistan. So I think we were able to build a very rich class. And I think in that process, we probably did, although we never aimed to, but I think we did many firsts in India. I also realized universities in India don't go to schools. We were perhaps the first one doing it. Universities had this mindset that we are a university and students will come to us. But even when we went in 2013, I remember foreign universities already were going to Indian schools. So it's not that it wasn't happening. So really going with this mission that we really want the best students for Ashoka, and being very humble about it really sort of helped, and just a lot of activity on the ground. And then we built some practices which continue. So Ashoka is never advertised. You will never see our advertisement anywhere in any print form, not on any television, nowhere. I don't think we've ever done AdWords. So the brand has been built very organically through word of mouth, PR, a lot of face to face. So those are maybe, Ankur, some early reflections on Ashoka outreach admissions. I mean, I can go on and on, but I'm conscious of time. So
No, thank you, Vineet. In that sense, there are many more questions, follow-up questions that come to my mind, and I'll come to that later. But one quick question. I think this realization that you said that you didn't know at that point of time that no Indian universities go to school. I mean, Ashoka became a pioneer for taking Indian universities to school, and you are now a case study for universities to do admissions and outreach. And I remember, when I was working with a parallelly different university, not with Ashoka, and I used to do their admissions and outreach, and I used to have the same question: why doesn't any Indian university go to a school and talk to a principal or a teacher or a counselor and a student directly? Why don't we take their faculty members? And that's where I clicked with Ashoka, and then that's where I really loved what Vineet said at that point of time in 2013 when I met him, and he said, we want to go to schools, because I had this resistance where I knew going to the schools was the right thing to do, but nobody was allowing me. And Ashoka was the first person, Vineet was the first person to act, not only allow me to do Indian outreach, but international outreach. So how we went to Middle East and Africa and Bhutan and all the countries that Vineet was mentioning is a story in itself, which will probably continue at some point later in this webinar. But Bhakti, over to you for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ankur. Vineet, you guys are, like I said in my post as well, the OG of outreach. And the word outreach, I think, can be literally attributed to Ashoka in the Indian context. Because like you very rightly mentioned before, Ashoka, I don't ever remember hearing or seeing any university, going to schools. It was all B2C, and it was all, if it was B2C, and it was largely ATL, above the line marketing. Um, Now, however, cut to 10 years down the line, there is, I think, a problem of plenty, because
Mm.
everyone is now going to schools, everyone is doing faculty workshops, everyone is being innovative out of the box, and we're all in the same boat. So now we've all jumped onto the same boat, and the boat's really not going many places. And so this is a very interesting sort of a situation to be in, because a lot of new age universities think, but we're doing exactly what Ashoka did, or we're doing exactly what some of the new age universities should be doing. We're showcasing thought leadership, and we're putting a faculty out there, and we have a great governance board, but we are not getting the numbers. So the whole question around being able to build a brand that is trustworthy is one part of it. But then getting numbers, right, and scaling that is a very different aspect, which a lot of universities are struggling with right now, whether we admit it or not, but that's a fact. So Vineet, what are your views on numbers versus thought leadership versus brand building and value?
Well, that's a difficult question. I mean, I've also done it maybe twice now with Plaksha and Ashoka, but so it's not easy to answer. But I think universities have to continuously think on what can be their proposition. So, I gave the Ashoka example, but I'll tell you what worked at Plaksha for us. So Plaksha, the first batch came in 2021, and it's really redefining engineering education in India. It's a very similar model of collective philanthropy. But so there in 2018, we started what some of you may know is called YTS, the Young Tech Scholars Program. And we had again two faculty, one from Harvard and one from, that time he was at MIT. Now he leads robotics at Northeastern, Hanumant and Ravi. And so we got them, and the first program we had in Pathway School in Aravali. It was a 2-week summer program. And again, as you know, summer programs being offered by Indian universities are again unheard of. Ashoka started the first one in 20 whatever 16. Plaksha started 2018, so this is like 3 years before the university opened. And the YTS just built a phenomenal brand. And we now, the YTS program has scaled to 200 students. Um, and these faculty would make students do build robots and build a small ECG machine. They would make them do, and students had a lot of fun. So that started to spread the message on what an engineering education at Plaksha could be. But I'm just giving an example. I think the problem is becoming more and more difficult. There's more competition. The early mover advantage has gone. So, but I think the only way to come, but it's not that great brands are not going to be built now, right? Google was not the first search engine to be invented. It was probably the seventh or eighth. So the great brands are going to be built still. And universities will have to continue to think how can they do things, what proposition clicks for them. So I think there are still opportunities. I currently have 2 3 opportunities in my mind which can click still, which universities should execute on. But somewhere you have to really put your experience of what craft you have to craft a story, or a narrative. You have to document that narrative. You have to firmly believe in that narrative. You need people who can walk the talk on that narrative, and then you have to take that narrative to market, whether you go the social media way, or you go individually to schools, or you reach students somehow. I think the formula is the same. The formula doesn't change. How you can do things may change. You do need a strong narrative. You need a strong story. You need to walk that story, and then you need good feet on the ground who can make things happen. Right? I'm a big fan of execution. You may have grand plans, but without execution things don't happen. So uh, it is that is pretty much the template. But yes, uh, within that one has room to play on what you can do, how do you take your programs to market. And I think the second thing I feel, which again was a lesson for us at Plaksha, you have to identify your target audience very clearly. A Shriram school is not as big, probably, maybe, or some other schools. Public schools are perhaps not going to be as big a market for Plaksha, which is a very engineering focused crowd. But all the DPSs, for example, the 140, 160 odd, are huge market for Plaksha, because it's so I think you have to identify your target audience very clearly and be very candid and open about it. I mean, understand what you are offering, and identify which are the schools where you will find your target audience. It's no point going to every school and then um, so I think that's also important. I think you have to be truthful on where, and it's okay. I mean, we're a huge country. We are still 26% on gross enrollment ratio. We are building universities at at the rate the world has not seen. So there's huge opportunity. Imagine this 26% becomes 50%, means we have to double our higher education capacity, right? I mean, where is this sort of opportunity elsewhere? Enrollment rates in the West are going down. Japan are going down. Where do you have this opportunity? So I think there is still great opportunity. There's huge opportunity. But what is your target segment? There is a segment at 50,000 rupees an annum. There is a segment at 2 lakh rupees. There is a segment at 8 lakhs. Uh, every university doesn't need to be a research university. You know, there is merit in great teaching. There is great merit in career outcomes after that. So I think if you can you don't have to invest what Jindal invested or Ashoka invested or somebody else did. So if you can be very clear on what your deliverables are, work with the constraints you have, and identify where are your students going to come from. What's the biggest likelihood, and focus there. And I think great brands are still yet to be built in Indian higher ed.
Vineet, just that's a very, I think, enlightening point, and I mean, might be very de rigueur for you, but it's enlightening because what I think a lot of us or a lot of universities try to do is be everything for everyone and be everywhere, and I think that is the challenge. A lack of analytics on before you even establish your university on who is this university for in terms of target markets, and then it kind of works from there, top down. And I think the involvement of management in the clarity, giving clarity of vision is the most critical thing. It cannot be led by the middle. It has to be led by the top, and it then has to filter down. So I think that clarity is what I think is a big takeaway, hopefully for a lot of people here. That even if you're well into your outreach season and you've done things a certain way for the last few years, it's never too late to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, okay, let's take stock of what are we doing. Are we talking to the right people, or are we just simply going to every career fair in every school because everyone else is? So thank you for that, Vineet. Ankur, over to you.
Thank you, Bhakti. I mean, Vineet already answered my question that I had in mind. So I was looking for an answer to the outreach strategy. What are the ingredients? I think he has already covered it. But I would like to have a follow-up question here, and what you said, Bhakti, that yeah, it's no longer 2013. Everybody wants to be in school, and I see a lot of our colleagues here who are running. You said it right, everywhere and anywhere. I mean, they will be invited to a fair in XYZ city, and they will be off with their bags, putting in a lot of effort, putting in a lot of resources. They come back and they're not sure of whether they were really impactful there in that part of the world for that institution. So, I mean, one of the things that I really find missing in 2023, and that was probably not the case in 2013, because as Vineet was mentioning, our education sector is growing in such a fast pace, and that, there are a lot of new things happening every month now in Indian higher ed. But Vineet, I mean, talking about outreach professionals. I mean, there are not enough admissions and outreach professional, to be honest. I mean, now I'm helping a couple of universities, consulting with them in building their teams, hiring people for them. And these are new age institutions, and they tell me, where do we find the right kind of people? And before that, what is it that we should look for in an admissions and outreach professional? So I think that's a valid question for a lot of our colleagues here also. What makes a good outreach professional? What is it if somebody is a fresher or wants to start out, or maybe 2 years or 3 years experience in doing something in a university setup? What are those 2, 3 skills that an outreach professional should have? And you, as a person who has built outreach team, hired a lot of people at all levels, what is it that you look for when you are hiring in admissions and outreach?
So, when we, Ankur, started building the team, this outreach professional did not exist. There are many more right now, right? There are many that all our collective institutions have graduated now, right? Many people out there. So we used to just look for people who can carry the brand with conviction. And one of our tests always what you had to make a presentation. You may remember, Uncle, you would have done the same too. One of the tests was that you have to present, right? You have to prepare and make a presentation, right? I mean, because and I would sit in some of those presentations to see how people are presenting. So it was very simple. Then, of course, the rest is very straight. It goes with every job. People have to be diligent. People have to be honest. People have to be able to work hard. But really, the thing for us was somebody who can really carry the brand and communicate the brand strongly. It is a communication exercise, but that's one side of the outreach professional. Today, we are as fussed about our people who go and make presentations in college as we are fussed about people who build our website or make written content. And I have to say, I mean, and no offense to anyone, but 90% of content on website is not good. It is quite pathetic. Uh, and often you find that websites and content is delegated to people, and often people are not reading what's been put there. Uh, your written content and how you are positioning your brand is as important, and maybe that's a separate skill, but that is as important, just getting your brand right, what has been written. I'm quite a stickler on that. um, there was a time when my laptop opened, the first thing that would open up is the Ashoka website. And I would scan 3 4 pages, and then the outreach team would get, and if I didn't feel anything is right, I would just pick up the phone and say, look. And then the team starts to get trained and understand. And but so I think the how you are communicated, so building the product, your narrative, and then how you are communicating that, so you need people with that ability. I'm not a big fan of people who come with experience. Some are great, but there are many people who come with experience, they are no good, right? So you have to go with conviction. We hired a lot of freshers. People had never done outreach in their lives, but they could carry the brand extremely well. We are a big fan of our own recruits, by the way. Our outreach team, half our people are our own alum, because they've been through Ashoka and they can communicate the brand well. So that's what I would look for. I think that's primary, whether it's written communication, which is as important, because your flyers, your website, everything is out there today. That's as important as your verbal communication, and these two teams have to work together. Um,
So I have one question, and then Ankur, we can move on to our pre-curated audience questions because we have so many of those. You mentioned the criticality of communication, whether it is in person or your websites or your digital communication, all of that, because at the end of the day, this is your brand narrative, right? Everything needs to add up and everything needs to be seamless. Uh, and yet we see often that there isn't a distinction. Sometimes some universities have different departments for all these purposes. So there's marketing, there's admissions, there's outreach. These are separate verticals, but often they're not. What is your view? And this is something that's often debated in outreach circles, that oh, outreach and admissions should be separate and marketing should be completely independent. What is your take on this?
so I think admissions. So firstly, I think the outreach and communication, whatever marketing may fall wherever, but outreach and communication has to be one integrated team. I mean, there's no question about that. And there has to be one communication professional who is responsible for the brand. She is probably vetting all your posters and communication, and she's really represent. And if you don't have anybody, then whatever the senior people, who somebody who's thought of a show. I remember I used to scan every communication. Pramath used to scan communication, and so we were pretty and we were sometimes hard on our communication folks if we didn't find something well. And so I think communication and outreach has to be one. Now, admissions, you can go both ways. There is an assessment part of admissions where you're interviewing, and where you sort of adding evaluating people. That's a separate skill. I don't think all outreach professionals can make great admissions evaluators. you know uh, Interview is very subjective, right? Interview, we deal with that problem too at Ashoka. Somebody would grade you 10 out of 20, so the same person can be graded 15 on 20. So and that and Ashoka can make a huge difference. So evaluation is but we train our interviewers, so that's a separate, I think that's a separate skill. Evaluation, assessment, some people can do both very well, but not necessarily that everybody can do both. Um, but yes, I think where they meet at the hip is the admissions team should be they should know what schools are, right? What does it mean to come from this school? What's the context, right? Uh, so we when we are giving offers of admissions, we also craft our class in that manner. How many students are coming from which city, which schools? Uh, you know, what are the sort of students we've admitted? So I think the admissions professionals should have that knowledge. So what we've done both at Ashoka and Plaksha is at the top, this integrates into one person. So the admissions and outreach director often is one person, uh, having a team which is doing outreach and admissions. Some people are doing both, but somewhere at the top it's sort of meeting. I found that structure, at least for us, has worked well.
Yeah, Ankur, over to you. Let's get on to
Yeah,
our next segment. Yes.
yeah. I think we have people waiting. So I'll go on straight away into the curated Q&A. Let's start with Jitin Chawla. Jitin ji, if you can unmute
If
yourself
you
and have your question for Vineet.
Yeah, hi, Vineet.
Hi, Jitin.
So, amazing meeting you here. So, are there any KPIs which a university should follow and understand that yeah, it is growing in this way, and maybe in the next 3 years, 5 years, this is where we want to reach. So, any comment on that?
No, of course. And I'm assuming your question is in the context of admissions and outreach. So, I mean, we track a lot of KPIs. We track the number of schools we've reached out to every year. We track, where all students are coming from. We track average rate of scholarship. We track yield, how many offers you made, how many people have joined. That's, what we call retention yield. Uh, we track scholarship yield. So you have to have KPIs because that over time then tells you how you're moving. We track the number of open houses we've done. We track the number of coffee chats. We track all of that data. So yes, I mean this is and universities in other areas also have various KPIs, but I think admissions and outreach, by the way, the KPIs are much easier to define. It gets far more difficult when you start to judge what's the quality of teaching in your university, right?
Yeah. So
How do
other
you?
areas also, if you can highlight, I think other areas also, if you can highlight, that will be an exciting discussion.
Well, we start at the input level, which is outreach and admissions. Uh, then we track KPIs in our student affairs. What's the student participation in clubs? What's the student participation in sport? We run an RA program. How effective are our RAs? We track the performance of our well-being center. As you all know, that mental health and well-being is a big concern. We run a strong well-being program. We track data around that. How many people are using the facility? How's that going? What's the effectiveness? We track summer programs, how many students are going abroad every year, which universities are they going to, what sort of scholarships are they getting. We track summer internships. Then we track academics in a different way. All our courses are rated and students have to give feedback. We track average course performance. We track performance across courses. Um, then we track placements. We track admissions, post-grad admissions, whether in India or abroad. Um, then we do a bunch of, I mean, we also fundraise a lot. We track CSR donations. We track individual donors. Um, so there is a fair bit of KPI everywhere.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Thank you, Vineet. And I'll call on Harish next, Harish Menon from the College Board to ask his question. Harish, please go ahead.
Thanks, Bhakti. Hello, Vineet. Nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you
It's
too.
it's always a pleasure and a learning experience to hear from you. Uh, Vineet, my question is less about admission and outreach, but more about measurement of skills and competencies of students. Uh, we all know learning happens everywhere, in the classroom, outside the classroom, when you play sports, when you're on project teams, at the workplace. And traditional institutions have long relied on degrees, credits, seat time. And I feel that that perpetuates privilege. It signals college brand. And it also prioritizes measures like GPAs and test scores. Um, Furthermore, there seems to be a disconnect between what employers are looking for in graduates and the skills with which graduates come out of these higher education institutions. In today's job markets, you can see in the news, employers are placing greater emphasis on skills like quant literacy, communication skills, team collaboration, analytical skills, etc. So, how are, if at all, higher education institutions in India preparing students to demonstrate what they know and are able to do so in a way that is very clear and concise and that meets the employer's needs?
It's a great question, and I'll probably take it in a few parts. I mean, I can't comment on every institution, but maybe from a bit from the context of Ashoka and Plaksha. So, and early on at Ashoka, we came up with what we started calling, and now I don't even know whether we started calling that, but we had a very strong set of 21st century skills that we were looking to build in our students. Critical thinking, problem solving, really the humility, self-realization, etc. So we had a long list, and we said, how does our curriculum and pedagogy really develop these skills? Uh, and then it was very conscious that our curriculum and pedagogy reflects that. I mean, we have a center for writing and communication, which is staffed by over 100 tutors, and every Ashoka graduate, irrespective of where she may have come from or what they may have studied, you'll find by the time they graduate, they can communicate extremely well, right? They are able to think critically. They are able to connect dots because the classroom is very debate and discussion oriented. The assignments are very open ended. They're very research based assignments. Half our faculty don't give tests, right? You could walk in with your full books into the examination hall, but I think the evaluation is such that it will demand you to connect the dots, read, write well. So I think there is a way in which curriculum and teaching can help build the sort of skills that you're talking of and the sort of skills that employers are looking at. And Ashoka did bust this myth. Some of the Ashoka graduates who we do have an excellent placement track record now, which is more than 5 years old, and some of our graduates who end up in consulting companies like a Bain, BCG, McKinsey, or even with banks are not necessarily economics graduates. It could be a history graduate, it could be a psychology graduate. So, and simply because they have developed, they may like studying psychology more than they like studying literature or economics, but all of them have developed this ability to think critically, to problem solve, some more than others. I mean, everybody can't be on the same trajectory. But I think there is a way in which curriculum helps to build 21st century skills. And Ashoka, in our DNA, it was pretty much, uh, we built breadth and depth. Today, jobs are not about really knowing one discipline. Many jobs, it's really understanding breadth. We built that. We built a strong program in reading, writing. We built a set of foundation courses where students are doing economics, quant literacy, some of these things very early on, right? So I think what is more hard to build, which employers are looking at, and I'm not sure we've figured, is really attitude, right? I mean, employers are looking as much at attitude as aptitude today. What's your fire in the belly? What's your motivation? And what how gutsy are you? How much I can you deal in terms? I don't think formal education has yet cracked on how to build attitude. But there is research starting to come out, and maybe if you get time, you should see this YouTube video. There's a UPenn faculty, Angela Duckworth. She's written this book called Grit, Grit, right? And she says that grit is the biggest predictor of success, more than, and I think you were making the same point that um, and I don't know how one builds grit in, but she says that there is a way to build grit in curriculum, and she is running experiments with a lot of high schools in the US, etc. I am personally a big fan of recruiting people on attitude sometimes, even over aptitude. Uh, how will you collaborate? How willing are you to learn? So I feel that's where I don't think, at least I have the answer. But I do think sport, for example, builds a lot of attitude, extracurriculars, sport, leadership, these opportunities to organize things in college. Uh, these things build a lot of attitude. But the 21st century skills, I'm convinced, can be built through through pedagogy, curriculum. Um, I hope I've tried to answer your question, Harish. It's a
You
great
did.
question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harish. May I now invite Neeraj? Neeraj, if you can go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yeah, hi Ankur, Bhakti, and Vineet, and the other folks. Thank you again for this pleasure. Vineet, you've already answered the preset question which I had, which was more on trust building. So I think you gave us a lot of pointers on that. So I'll take this opportunity to ask you another question where, if you look at the Indian education system compared to the Western education, so on a personal note, it pains me that students go abroad to study and we've still not been able to create the kind of infrastructure. Means it there can be choices, but we still have very clear demarcation of if somebody is doing really well and has all the means and requirements, they would not look at Indian universities. So because you are a leader in this space, what's the time horizon you feel? Because there are people like me, and I also look at what Ankur is researching on his PhD thesis. So what is the kind of contribution we can make, or what is the roadmap for people like us who want to bring the Indian institution, the Nalanda way, back to India?
Well, I mean, that's a great question again, Neeraj, and it's a topic that is also very close to my heart. So when we were building Ashoka, we very soon for us, Ashoka was not just about building one great institution. We also felt that can Ashoka become the role model for 100 other Ashokas to come up, right? And maybe some better versions of Ashoka. So, and if you see, I'm a big fan of the.
Somebody needs to mute themselves. Alif, can you mute yourself, please? Alif, can you please mute? Oh, okay, yeah,
I
go ahead.
muted
Go
him.
ahead.
Yeah, done.
Yeah.
So, the US is a great model of success in higher education. So and I mean, I genuinely say so because they are not one, two, five, 10, but they're like 400 universities, which are absolutely wonderful in terms of research, teaching, infrastructure. Every state has 10 of them or 15 of them. So the depth is really amazing. And that really, I feel there is a strong correlation between the development of that higher education ecosystem and the way the US economy has performed. Look at some of the biggest innovations coming out, Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, all of these are coming, Tesla now, right? I mean, Germany was leading in car manufacturing. All of these innovations are coming out of United States. So they have really clearly they lead every other country by miles in my mind when it comes to quality of higher education, and they've managed to attract the best talent from around the world. Some of best talent is still going to the United States. So there is a model. I mean, we don't have to exactly follow the US model. I think we have to build our own model, but there are many lessons to be learned from that model. The way public institutions, the way philanthropic institutions, and the way pure for profit, the community college, I think they've all sort of come together to build that ecosystem. So India has a long and tough journey ahead. It's not an easy journey, right? We sometimes get extremely sentimental and euphoric about the fact that we have a demographic dividend and we are very smart, and so it's a matter of time. Uh, well, that's all great. That's all great news. But we do have a hard and tough journey because I think what is clearly what I saw, I visited many of these universities. We collaborate with some. The rigor of those universities is at a different level. People work extremely seriously and consciously on whatever they do. So the rigor, whether it's academic rigor, I mean, the quality of our PhD degrees in India is abysmal. I mean, I can say this openly in this forum, right? It's difficult to recruit PhD students for faculty. It's not because you have a bias, but the fact is we just don't produce good enough PhDs. The rigor for research. Now, if you don't produce good PhD, where are you going to get the faculty, right? So it is a tough and arduous road. I feel a lot has changed in the last 10 years. Higher education is on the concurrent list of the Indian Constitution. So both the central government and state governments legislate. Many states, Haryana, I think, is a great example. OP Jindal, Ashoka, many others. Uh, so because they liberalized in 2007, many states did not liberalize at all till about a year ago. So they did not have these institutions which came up. So private higher education will have a big role to play in India. And it has started to happen. The last 10 years have been very defining. I personally think in the next 2 decades, I can't predict what the count would be, but I hope 100, 150 universities which are high quality. Ashoka, Jindal, Shivnadar, Kriya, many universities are doing great work. I think they'll all sort of blossom into great institutions. And another 150 may come up. And that can really build a good ecosystem, right? Where people want to join academia. We have high quality PhD students coming out. You suddenly build an ecosystem for high quality. It's a little bit, for lack of a better comparison, it's a you can draw a parallel to the Indian IT industry. In the 90s, you had maybe one Infosys, one TCS, etc. When you had many, now you see a dearth of IT professionals, and then you see so many startups. So the whole ecosystem is, India doesn't need to make a statement about its IT prowess now. People know, you want good software written, go to India. So the same can happen with Indian higher education, but it's a long and difficult journey. It's not going to be an easy journey because unfortunately the gap is too wide. The gap right now between what our institutions are and what we are competing with globally is high. And especially, and I can, talk about rank. I still think we do a good job, and the institutions do a decent job of teaching. Right? On teaching, we are doing well. That's why our students go to universities all over the world and do so well in research or become deans. But I think we're not doing a good job in research. We're doing a horrible job in research. And that's where the problem is. If you look at any top ranking, QS, Times Higher Education, etc., you don't find Indian institutions. That's largely because we get very poor scores on research. Uh, and the government will have to play a role there. The US higher ed was fueled a lot by investments that were made by DARPA and NIH post World War II, and that's how they not only benefited public institutions but benefited the likes of a Stanford, MIT. They got built on research money that was given by government. So I think the research quotient of Indian universities will have to transform humongously if our higher education has to go to that level. So there is still a long way to go, but I see good signs. If you ask me, I'm more optimistic today than I was 10 years ago. Uh, I'm also a firm believer. I hope it happens in my lifetime that we really become the country where people come to study, from all over. So I think we're all living that dream, but it's a difficult journey to navigate. But I'm optimistic that it should happen.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet. And I think I agree with Vineet, and I share that optimism in terms of there is a huge potential for us to improve in the areas of research, especially that I am now pursuing research. And basic skills, when I see my colleagues and the larger PhD students across India, I mean, basic skills like reading and writing, which are so integral to research. I mean, how do you read consciously? I mean, we are just like when we start our PhD in Indian ecosystem, the first 2 semesters they only teach us to how to read and how to write, and that's the thing that we should be taught in our schools, but nobody talks about in our schools. So I feel very that when we reach to PhD level, I mean we are as it is not very well prepared. And that is what I learned now, and that is the case at top of our institutions, the best of our institutions. The same case is the same is the case. I've talked to a lot of people at IITs and IIMs doing the same things and struggling with the same issues. I'm not able to read well. I'm not able to write well, and that's a big pain point. But Vineet, I think we all share the enthusiasm these days. I mean, with all the positive news about our economy, Air India putting in $1 million contracts, and Vande Bharat Express, and economy growing, and you reference to IT sector. I think that's a wonderful reference. I mean, in terms of now that in hindsight, when I look back at your remark, I think that's a very good reference for the Indian higher education space too. But it's just that the policy required, the changes, there is too much bureaucracy in one sense that IT may could have poised, move faster because they don't face that much regulation. In India, the another big question that we'll come to in the later part of this conversation is access, which Ashoka did so wonderfully well by having that special scholarships, full financial aid. I mean, not many private institutions are able to do that or not able to reflect on that part of their how that should fit in their admissions and outreach role. And I really would want you to, before I see Shaheen's hand up, I see Johnson hand up, I will come to you. And there are a couple of questions that I have to ask to you from colleagues who have left already because of internet access. But quickly, if you can talk about the access part of Ashoka and Plaksha, how you have ensured that even in a private university, you are giving scholarships and you are even giving stipends to students, not only from India, but international students to come and study and just be doing one thing, studying with their full heart and not be bothered about, which a lot of other institutions are not able to do. What is the learning there?
So I think when we started Ashoka, it's not that we had plenty of funding. In fact, I remember when the campus had to open in 14 and a year before, we were extremely short on funding. We were like 6, 8 donors at that point. And my belief is that if you do something good and if you do something excellently well, then raising funding is always not easy, but then funding can come. So we run probably one of the largest scholarship programs in the country today, where 20-25% students come free of cost, and maybe half our students are on scholarship. We uh, run an office of learning support where we take students who have dyslexia or some other learning disorders. We support them through accommodation. And I think the bias has been to take more risks than less. I remember in 2014, we had a student who was 100% visually impaired. And the admissions team said, we really like this student, but our dean said, look, we can't, we're not ready. And, I mean, I remember I said, we will never be ready till we take someone. And then we took that student. And then we took somebody who next year who had 100% hearing impairment, right? And the university coped with that. So, uh, and I think now, of course, people do talk about our inclusive policies, etc. I mean, we love it. We always stood for that. We always felt, because in the manner that we were built, we always felt Ashoka should be accessible to all, right? So especially people with differently able needs or people who are first time learners. Of course, we are looking for a spark. We're looking for a curiosity. You have to meet our admissions criteria. But the bias has always been to be more inclusive than less. And gradually we found that funding did come. We raised a lot of scholarships through CSR. Our Center for Special Needs is funded. You have to remember that there is a donor somewhere who's had the same pain point. His child or her child probably, they could afford to pay, but they did not find that education. And now they want to make sure that other students can find that education. So we feel absolutely humbled and good that we've been able to make this possible. But it was not so when we started. We've gradually just kept raising the bar. Every time we did this, okay, let's do this now, or let's do this. And fortunately for us, so far, it's kept on working. But yes, it has to start with an intent. Um, I think it's a simple intent of saying, look, we will be fully inclusive. I mean, I don't know where the money is going to come from, but at least let's start with that intent. I think we did that. And it's not that you have to pick your whole class like that, but uh, going in that journey and then gradually raising the bar really helps. That's what I would say. But you have to articulate that right up front. Now it's fairly understood at Ashoka that people, it's everybody. You don't have to make that case now. Everybody understands.
Yeah, Vineet, I think the takeaway honestly is if you are, the biggest risk is not taking a risk, as Zuckerberg has said. And, that brings me to something that's very related. Vani, your question is so related to this. So please go ahead and ask your question, Vani.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, first of all, for this amazing session. So my question is that, what were the challenges which you really faced, while this whole setup of the university, like first Ashoka and then Plaksha, and how did you and your team really overcome with the challenges which were faced? And this can be, I mean, outreach, non-outreach, any, I mean, any in any direction, not primarily to the outreach where I think the maximum discussions are happening. So yeah.
Well, that's a fairly long answer, and I don't know where to start. And I would think that we did things very entrepreneurially, in small steps. I don't think it was very baby. Our vision was always very grand. Our intent was, we were very clear. We want to build one of India's finest university. That intent and ambition has been there from day one. But we knew it's not that it'll happen on day one. So, but what has helped is that mission has helped us to keep the bar high always. So everything that we try to do, we want to make sure that we are doing it in absolutely the best way, with very clean intent, very genuinely. I can give so many instances, when we even started admissions early on, we wouldn't penalize people if they missed their interview, right? Many universities would. Okay, you've missed your interview, your turn is over, gone. We never did that. People would come up to us and sometimes not carry. So we would give them another date. We would give them another date, right? So people would come to us sometimes and you're not carrying up photocopies, etc. Okay, we have a copier here. Why don't you? So it's not making people run. So I think it was really this idea that we are here to offer a great experience and education to our students. And that really starts from the day you start engaging with them. It's not necessarily when they come to your campus, but it really has to start from the day. Um, and by the way, it's not that we are not fond of looking at our students as customers. We look at them as students. We have to offer them the best experience as the best but we also demand, we can be demanding from our students. We demand a certain conduct, we demand a certain honor code. So we can be, so I think, but those principles, we've always kept a very, very high bar. We've executed in baby steps, small steps. So first class was 100, it started to grow gradually. We started with 14 faculty. When we started, we have had 2 buildings on campus. So it's been very gradual progress, but I think everything that we've done has been very high quality. And yes, as you said, Vani, along the way, there have been many challenges. Uh, the biggest challenge for us, which happens every year, is because hostels are getting made and students have to come in August and the buildings are never ready. No matter what you do, they're always running late. So that is a perpetual challenge. We've had our share of media challenges, as some of you know. We've dealt with those. Um, we've had our share of funding challenges. So there is always, we always sit around the table, think through. We do invest a lot of time in dealing with challenges. Our teams uh, are able to get into war room situations very quickly, and some of us also lead from the front. So I think, but collectively, some challenges we are able to navigate better, some challenges not so well. But I don't think there's a sort of a, there is just very good intent. We have very capable people. We try to plan as much as we can. On financial planning, we are always a step ahead. On academic planning, we are always ahead. So some of those things have worked well. But yes, it's, I often say that if you have to be a university administrator, you have to assume there is a crisis on campus every day, right? So when you're recruiting people, often you think that, okay, this is a good person in a crisis, and this is a good person uh, in a role which is stable and doesn't. But as a university administrator, you are always, there is a crisis on campus every day. It could be big or small, but I think that's the mindset that you have to go with. And then the teams automatically sort of get used to dealing with those challenges. But yes, we have our fair share, and um, I would say that we have got a lot of support from government over time. I think very early on, both from the state and I think people felt we got a lot of support from corporates. Uh, that has helped tremendously. And we are now getting a lot of support from our alum who uh, are we have now a few alum donors already in the our donor list. So
Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
answering.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vineet. Quickly, I have Johnson and Shaheen who have raised their hands. So, Johnson, we can start with you and then we'll go to Shaheen. Over to you, Johnson.
Thanks, Ankur. Thanks, Vineet sir, for listing out a whole set of C's, and I'm not going to repeat that among communications critical thinking. But my question is a bit probably not directly outreach. You've mentioned in the journey of Ashoka Plaksha, and I can say the growing liberal education space in India. This whole idea of uh, interdisciplinary and can I say transdisciplinary journey that has been happening. So just like the industry has been mourning that people are coming with very academic, vertical specializations, but not laterally equipped to face today's industry challenge. But can I say also that same challenge you mentioned in the passing, though people have a PhD, but on those who are providing the learning, are they really equipped to give the current industry norm, current understanding? So great opportunity was very recently created by a professor of practice or to get alternative options for someone who just can come in and even teach a paper, teach a semester. How do we get this right so that the student finally is exposed to the best option to be ready for when he goes either to grad school or even just to the workplace?
no, it's a great question, Johnson. And uh, so my belief is I'm firmly in the camp that in many disciplinary areas, professors of practice can do a great job, and especially disciplines which have a professional bearing. Look, for example, at Plaksha, we have a professor of practice track, which is extremely strong because you're dealing with modern technologies. Now, I don't know how many of you got a chance to really look at Plaksha degrees, but these degrees are created from scratch. I don't think there's an institution in India or abroad which has the sort of degrees that Praksha created. It was blue sky thinking. We did away with electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. We have a degree called robotics and automated systems. Uh, we feel biology is going to be a key science for the 21st century. And biology married with engineering, we have a degree called biological systems engineering. It's not the traditional biomedical or bio, but it's really about what the new bio holds for the world. Your plants are getting your clothes are getting synthesized today, your food is getting synthesized. So I believe the Delhi pollution problem is going to be solved by some genetic modeling. So I think there is a great future in those kind of degrees, and these are really, really futuristic. Now, some of the best teachers here will come from industry, right? Uh, Now, I'll give another example. This is from Ashoka. We are setting up recently a center for energy transition. Now, as the world moves from fossil fuel to renewable energy, how will this transition happen? Now, you're not going to find many experts in the world in academia who can, this is going to come from people who are leading this change, right? Uh, so law is another example, practitioners of law in business. So there are many disciplines where you make a good point that people from practice can actually be outstanding teachers, right? Uh, Now, the only thing you have to warn against, and I say this with all humility, that it's not easy to be a great teacher. Everybody is a teacher, but to become a great teacher is not easy. Teaching has years of labor, years of effort, uh, and I truly value great teaching. Now, the problem I've sometimes found is often great practitioners may not be great teachers. So you still have to hold them to the same bar of excellence and not just because somebody is a great practitioner does not necessarily mean that he or she may be a great teacher. So I think you have to hold that same bar to everyone. But I think these are the ways in which education, higher education will be disrupted. I mean, I'm also, while I am a university administrator and building institutions, but I am also a critique of what's going on. You know, I often joke that higher education is a Brahminical caste order, right? I mean, you have a PhD with this, and this is where you go. So I think at some point that this has to be disrupted too, right? So I think there are challenges with every system, and but I totally agree that practitioners can make great teachers, and I think the best universities in the future are going to be who can marry great academics, practitioners, people who can teach well, people who can research well. So Plaksha has done a far is very radical in that sense. We've really stretched the bar on how we are rethinking technology and engineering and bringing practitioners in.
Thanks, Vineet. Very encouraging.
Thank you, Vineet. I think we'll take Shaheen's question, Ankur, and then we can take
Yeah.
Sudarshana's question. Go ahead, Shaheen.
Hello, everyone. Ankur, Bhakti, Vineet, I must commend you for the excellent job you've done. It's been an extremely informative, thought-provoking discussion. And I come from the other end of the world. I'm in Kenya, not in India. And I have been a careers coordinator at an IB school, Aga Khan Academy. So I'm looking at this whole thing from a school student's perspective, and at the same time, the university level education. So some of the very poignant and relevant points that were given by Vineet, I think, on the shortcomings of universities, I think that is what I would like to bring to the foyer. And I feel that one of the solutions to placing right students in the right place is introducing problem-based learning from school level into university, right? And I think the 21st century transferable skills are looking for practical problem solving, critiquing, etc. So if you don't train them at school level, definitely there is not going to be an overnight change at university level. And therefore, curriculums both at school level and at university should now be looking more at problem-based learning. And therefore, that is where we'll get more and more scientists, more and more STEM people coming to the foyer and developing universities. And so that the outreach people, as we said, have a targeted audience. The universities that are great at STEM programs, at the latest technology, robotics that you're looking at, because AI is now, the big thing. So obviously, I have learned a lesson that there is a university in India now where I can suggest my students, okay, so here is a platform for you if you're a scientist and a great one. Why don't you try this instead of US or UK or Australia? But the important thing is, I feel that there has to be a revamp of curriculum at university level. And again, one of the technologies that's just come up, GPT, may be putting us all out of work, whether it's a school counselor, careers counselor, or a recruiter, an outreach recruiter. Because now all you have to do is put your information on GPT and it tells you which are the top universities, put in how much you can afford, and it gives you the universities at that level. All right. So many of the online application systems have also got this particular feature. And so we are up against logarithms. And I feel as a career counselor at school, what you talked about in terms of road shows going into the school, and well, I had Cardiff University come over and do a first year experiment in the science lab where they sort of extracted their genes from saliva and then change that into protein. And that was very exciting. And that's where students realize that there are other options than medicine. There's a lot of research-based careers you can go in. So I think more than just outreach personnel going and talking about universities, is the practical hands-on experience that students require at school. And so what you have to have a good study of what those students are all about, the school that you're going to, and how can you tailor these road shows and summer camps. And that's my suggestion. I hope it's useful.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaheen, for that remark and joining us from Nairobi. I hope you're doing well. Bhakti, you have a couple of points to make, I believe.
No. I just wanted to comment that Shaheen, yeah, I think you're, as from the school perspective, thank you for reiterating what a lot of us think. Again, the question that comes back to us as outreach professional, as universities, is how do we do it? How do we do any of this blue sky thinking? Making it sustainable, and execution is everything. So how do we make sure that once you start something, you deliver good quality and you don't do it as a one-off? I think that is a big challenge for a lot of universities as well. So thank you for your comment, Shaheen. And Ankur, I think we have one parting question for Vineet,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
we're all
yeah.
dying to know. So go ahead, Ankur.
There are two. There are two actually. I'm conscious of the time. We have 12 minutes on the clock. But I have a couple of questions that our colleagues have shared with me that they want us to raise with Vineet. Vineet, one of the questions is from our colleague from VIT, Vellore. He is the guy at admissions and outreach department there, and his name is Sudarshan. Sudarshan mentioned something which is, I think, very apparent to all of us working with universities. He says that a lot of the new age universities that are coming up now uh, are not really open about the kind of placement opportunities that these courses will be providing for the students. And you mentioned about the Ashoka students doing very well in terms of even a history major or an economics major working at Bain and companies like that. But how important is the ROI question? I mean, any fair that we go to, any parent will come up to our stall and say, एवरेज सैलरी क्या है सर आपकी यूनिवर्सिटी का and we would I would personally get irritated and say there are 10 other questions that you should be asking me. This can be the 11th one, but okay, no problem, we can answer this, and then please ask me 4 or 5 other relevant questions. Who is the curriculum, who is teaching you, what is the international collaborations, what are the promoters, I mean, vision of the university, and all those questions. But I mean, broader sense, how important is the placements question in the mind of founders like you? And mind you, I've read the case study that came out on Ashoka in IIM Ahmedabad, and I've read the entire story that is there, and that's riveting for me. Somebody who has worked at Ashoka, and to read that, which we feel Ashoka is a big thing. I mean, today nobody can imagine the startup pangs that you had, but to read and go through that case study shows us that it was just another garage story where 3 or 4 chaps got together and they had a vision and they were committed to that vision. And then now today it's a big organization that is becoming a role model for everybody. But how big was the placements question in your mind? If you can, talk about
Placements
that
question
when we are
for
setting up a show.
no, I think for us, placements question has been right up front. While we firmly believe that universities serve many purposes, and I think the primary being that you're training somebody for life, really not for the first job. Universities have to be places which create knowledge and which train people to navigate life, not just their job. Uh, but yes, students everywhere, not just in India, students everywhere, all over the world today, uh, are very curious that what is the kind of career they'll have after they graduate. So we've invested deeply in career advancement. We have, I think, a 13 or 14 people team that runs placements. We place every student at Ashoka across. Uh, I think institutions have to put attention to this. Now, when you are going to answer really Sudarshan's question, often it may happen that when you're recruiting your class, you can only make a promise that, okay, we will have great placements, but you may not have track record. That track record takes, I think I need to switch on some lights in my room.
Yeah, it was dark, so that's what I was thinking. Anybody else has any question or wants to ask anything? We still have 9 minutes. I mean, Bhakti will go next with the final
So
question, but if anybody has any remark.
I think one has to invest in career teams, and sometimes new universities may not be able to, because it takes 4 years to graduate a student, or sometimes 3 years to graduate a student. But any university which is not putting attention to this will have a challenge. There is no doubt in my mind, right? Faculty often are not going to put their mind to it. This has been my experience. Faculty come with the idea of doing a great job on teaching and research, but often not with the mindset of placing. So I think this has to really be the job of university administrators and management. And um, but Sudarshan's point is valid. I mean, I remember when we used to go early on, people used to ask us, you liberal arts degree in literature, history, what kind of job will my child get? And while we made up whatever story we did, the fact of the matter is people only started believing us when the students graduated. And so you have to walk the talk on that one. There's no
Love the
going
honesty,
Perfect.
Vineet.
yeah.
Love the honesty, Vineet. We made up whatever story we did, and then we had to walk the
Great.
talk. I think that is the story of everyone's life, especially a liberal arts college and institution. Speaking of liberal arts, Leonard, you had your hand raised. Go ahead, and then we'll ask the last question. Go
One
ahead,
of the
Leonard.
other big
Leonard from.
questions we used to have from the south of the Deccan is that we are sending our daughter to Sonipat, and what's the safety of our children there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I remember, like, the first 2 years, that was the big question on everyone's mind. And again, what else can you do except really articulate it well and give data points, etc. But it's really, some questions are only answered with time.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Leonard. Go
Leonard.
ahead.
Right. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It's an absolute pleasure hearing you, Vineet. I've been really looking forward to this session, but I've joined late. I was occupied. But then the last point that you mentioned about placement, I think I currently am in Kriya University, and so I see that the parents and students are extremely aware about what they're really getting into, and they're very pointed, questions to really ask. They are not really looking for the placement. They're really looking for, if somebody's taken up psychology, they won't like to know what kind of placement that the university is providing in psychology, which kind of companies that they can get into, what kind of package that they could be looking for. So I think this is a very interesting time where the students are asking and the parents are asking very pointed questions. And the fact that university is only putting it a fact that that this is sort of a general CTC that the or the kind of an average CTC that a university is helping in terms of placement. I think it's much beyond that now. Students and parents are looking through a lot of these things, and that's the kind of a question that we're getting currently, especially for outreach and admissions. So I like the frankness of your conversation, and I and as a university, again, we are a young university, but then I see that students are not going to be fooled up just with an average CTC package altogether. They really want to know much more. Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot solve all. I mean, for all university admin, you can't solve all problems on day one, but you have to make sure you solve those problems as time goes by. So you may not be able to solve the placement problem on day one, but you have to solve it by the time students come up for graduation. So, right. And no
Thank you.
matter what
Thank
you
you.
say, sometimes, yeah, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Vineet. Go ahead.
No, and I think often parents and students may not be convinced by whatever answers you give them. But I mean, I think you just have to walk the talk on convict. But I've seen, be candid. I one thing in. I mean, this is an outreach and admission session. Just candid honesty helps. I've been in so much outreach sessions where we've been really honest. If we didn't have an answer to something, we would say we don't know this. We will figure this out. People used to tell us, your university is a construction site. Yes, it is a construction site. I mean, there's a reality, right? Um, but yes, over time, you have to walk the talk on everything that you promised. I mean, there is no going away there. People are going to hold you to account.
Thank you for that, Vineet. Thank you for the brutal honesty, and thank you for, I think, just backing, at a 50,000 feet level, backing the fact that we are not salespeople and it's okay to just say things like it is when you're talking to students and parents, because at the end of the day, you are leading someone to make a decision about the rest of their lives. So, yes. And on that note, I mean, okay, so I'm personally very excited about this question because Ashoka, then Plaksha, and two very exciting projects, hugely successful. We know Plaksha is doing amazing work, and you have a fantastic outreach team. What next is in store for Mr. Vineet Gupta, and what can we expect in terms of new ideas and anything new that you're coming up with? And linked to that, what is Ashoka's growth story going forward? Because with all the value and all the legacy that has been created, sustaining that with numbers is a challenge. So, what's next for Mr. Gupta and what's next for Ashoka?
Well, let me start with Ashoka first. That's again where a lot of my time is now going. Um, Ashoka is 800 students. We're looking at about 8,000, 10,000 students in 10, 15 years. It's going to be a 100-acre campus. Many of you've probably been to our campus. It's 25-acre we now. Uh, on Ashoka, I think my comment is the best is yet to come. Ashoka is going to ride on what we've achieved, and I am truly optimistic that this will be a defining institution in India, and what will unfold in the next 10, 15 years is going to be even better uh, than what Ashoka has done. It's the aspirations are high. I think we have a great set of people. The intent is strong, and we are executing very, very quickly. We are taking a major position in the sciences now, biosciences, data sciences. So Ashoka is foraying into the sciences. So it's liberal arts and sciences. Um, so I think it's exciting times for Ashoka. It will be Plaksha is sort of just in the early years, but on a great start, and it will do well. I think it will redefine what engineering education means in India. So I pretty much have my hands full. Honestly, I've not really thought about what next, but I can tell you a topic that intrigues me a lot. A topic that intrigues me a lot is medical education in India. I think first I feel medical education and technology have to marry. Medical education and technology cannot exist in isolation. Um, and there is a way probably that the medical education is again suffering on capacity. Many of our students, I mean, I was appalled when I read this story that many students were stuck in Ukraine, um, and they could not go back to study medicine, right? So clearly there's something not correct we've done there, right? India, again, we have a challenge of population. India has a huge shortage of doctors. So how are we going to think this different? This is a question that has intrigued me. It's bothered me over the last year or two. Um, no plans, but yes, I mean, if we could build a medical school in 10, 15 years somewhere, would be quite outstanding in a very different way where medicine combines with technology. I also believe that I don't know if some of you followed that the AIMS now has this Center for Integrative Medicine, right? Where a lot of traditional medicine in India has not got credit because it's not been done following principles of modern science, where you run experiments, you do trials, and you collect data and really validate. But I think this center has changed that. So, uh, you go to a hospital in the US and they may give you a lot of breathing exercises for if you're dealing with a heart disease or a lung disease, what traditionally in India has been practiced for long. But I feel for a country like India, it may not be possible for us to compete very quickly in modern medicine. We're not going to we're not going to develop the next biggest breakthrough in cancer research. It's not happening in India, clearly for the next 20 years, 30 years. But But there are many things we can give to this world where we can lead the world. And I think the integrative medicine is one area scientifically we can really lead the world where India can follow. So I think those are some things that excite me. Engineering education excited me, and then we got Plaksha rolling. So I don't know, but it's not easy. I'm also it's not easy to build institutions, and so I'm. But yeah, those are some questions that excite me.
That's amazing, Vineet. And you've given us, literally in like the last hour and a half, you've covered so much ground. And thank you to all the participants as well for keeping your questions directed and very focused. And just as a quick summary before Ankur ends the session, I think we've covered conversations around outreach approach and strategy, to the value of clarity and vision, to the importance of communication and its integration with outreach, your hiring strategy and what you look for when you hire outreach professionals, admissions professionals, KPIs that are important from an outreach perspective. A great recommendation for a book, Angela Duckworth's Grit. And I've put that in chat, but I'll also put it on our WhatsApp community for TOC. And lastly, I think one of my biggest takeaways is the criticality of robust research infrastructure and support to ensure that we are genuinely on track to becoming a global destination for study, and of course the bias to take more risks, in your own words, Vineet. So thank you for that. And Ankur, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bhakti. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. I mean, my closing remarks are ones of gratitude and thank you to Vineet. I mean, it's been long that I had a chance to meet him. I mean,
Yes, I've
post-COVID,
been
I've never
following
got a.
your social media posts, so I hope you guys are doing well.
No, thank you so much. It's an honor to reconnect with you and spend 90 minutes, even with the larger community. I mean, it's such an honor, and graciously that I remember Vineet. I mean, he talked about my presentation, and everybody in Ashoka had to present. So just close off with that. So Vineet told me, you have to come and do a presentation on what you will do. In terms, and everybody asked me, how did you land up in international outreach in Ashoka University? And I said, it was just a truly entrepreneurial journey for me also. I went in, I presented my plan to Vineet, Ashish, Pramath in the famous Oberoi Hotel where Ashish had an office, and I mean, it's a story in its own. And out the coffee shop, I presented on a laptop, and Vineet was there, and Ashish was there, Pramath was there, and they asked me a lot of questions, and there were a lot of numbers that were run. But one thing that I still remember with me at the end of that 1 hour presentation is that they were looking for something that Vineet mentioned here. They were looking for people with passion. They were looking for people with attitude, even more than aptitude. And that was pretty clear in that interview. I mean, they were, yes, very concerned with the numbers and all that, how what will happen year 1, year 2, year 3. But I mean, that was the approach that really stood out for me in 2013. And I think when he mentioned that today in his conversation, that brought back those same memories for me. So thank you, Vineet, for bringing that to our Indian higher ed space, which is still 10 years down the line, as nascent as it is, because people ask our colleagues here, to be very candid with you, 3 महीने में कितने admission ले आएगा, तेरे को हम admissions and outreach join करते हैं. They don't even understand. It's not a 3 month gig. Top promoters, I'm now consulting, and I go to these people and they'll say, अंकुर हम तेरे को consulting देते हैं, तेरे को 6 महीने में 600 बच्चे चाहिए. So I said, sir, मेरे पास नहीं है ऐसा कुछ भी. But and I really felt the outreach collective was built around this sentiment, because a lot of our colleagues were feeling burnt out. They were not able to understand, what is admissions, what is outreach, what are they doing in this world, in the world of Indian higher ed outreach, where everybody is asking them to do things
What is
and
the
do
reason
magical.
for our
So,
existence?
so
Existential
you
question.
you being you being here and telling the story from that perspective of Ashoka University is such a relief to all of us, and I speak on behalf of all the community here. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure within next 15 minutes, our WhatsApp group will be filled with a lot of commenting messages for doing another great session. So thank you so much, Vineet, for being the gracious that you are. More power to you. More, we want you to build more and more institutions. I know it's not easy. I've seen you work crazy with terms of Ashoka and now Plaksha and Jamboree and a lot of other things that you keep on doing, sir. But we give you or our energies or our positive vibes are with you. And hopefully we'll see you soon physically also somewhere. So thank you, Vinny. Thank you so much for
Yes.
being here with us.
And
Thank
and
you.
Mr.
Thanks a lot.
Gupta, on behalf of the Outreach Collective as well as Indian higher ed in general, whether people say to you, acknowledge it, admit it or not, Ashoka is the OG, and you have created an institution that will be a legacy and something to aspire to forever. So you have created something that everyone aspires to be, and that is truly legendary. So a big shout
Well,
out to you for
that's
all
very
your
humbling,
amazing
I
work.
must say. But thank you. It was a lot of fun to talk to all of you. But thank you for all that you say, and all the best to all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for coming.
Vinith. Bye bye.
Bye,
And with
guys.
this, we
Bye to you.
come to
See
the
you
close of
guys.
the session. Bye bye.
Bye bye.